Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a carrot cheesecake, and this is what it looks like. This cake has 2 layers. On the bottom we have a moist carrot cake. It's flavored with ground cinnamon. It's full of grated carrot and chopped nuts. And then on top of that we're going to put a smooth and creamy cheesecake. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 190 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a 9-inch springform pan. This one has about 3-inch sides, so that would be 23 by 7.5 centimeters. And a springform pan comes in 2 pieces, has a clip there, and you just put that, snap it shut. And then you can either butter the inside of your pan, or I'm just going to spray it today with one of these non-stick sprays, or you could lightly oil it as well. And then to make sure that the cake doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, I'm just going to take a round of parchment. I put it in there, get a little of the oil or butter on it, and then flip it over. So that way the parchment paper doesn't stick to the bottom of our cake. Okay, and then what I did is just put, sometimes people say, you know, depending on your springform pan, especially as it ages, it can sometimes leak. So we don't want it leaking in our oven, so then we have to clean it. So just put it on a larger baking sheet. That way the drips will go on there. So now we're going to start by making our cheesecake topping. If you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really you could just in a bowl with a wooden spoon or a spatula. So cheesecake, we need cream cheese. You will need 1 8-ounce package, or 1 8-ounce block, which is 225 grams of, we want the full fat cream cheese. We're going to have the fat in this cake. Put that in there and have it at, I think I said, have it at room temperature. And then add 1/3 cup, 65 grams of granulated white sugar. I know mine looks not white, it looks kind of off-white. It's because I'm using organic, but you can use either type. And I'm going to flavor it with 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. If you don't want the vanilla flavor, just leave that out. So now I'm going to beat this just on like medium-low speed, because all I want to do is get all the ingredients mixed together and the cream cheese becomes nice and smooth. Okay. Periodically stop and scrape down the sides and bottom of your bowl, especially with this cream cheese when you're first putting it in there, because it's very sticky. It tends to stick to the bottom sides of your bowl. So next, you will need 1 large egg. That's 50 grams out of the shell, and have your egg at room temperature. And I'm just going to beat that in medium-low speed. Okay. Scrape this again. And our last ingredient is 1/2 cup, which is 120 milliliters, 120 grams of, I'm using a full fat sour cream. Have it at room temperature. We're going full fat today. And I'm just going to beat that in. And that will be our cheesecake topping. Okay, we are done. So I'm just going to transfer that over to the bowl, because I need to wash my bowl and my beater. And I will be right back, and we will make our carrot cake. So now for our carrot cake batter. The first thing you will need is 1/2 cup, which is 50 grams. I'm using pecans today. You could use walnuts, you could actually use almonds or hazelnuts. Or if you don't like nuts, you can just simply leave them out. Or sometimes people like to put in raisins in their carrot cake. So it's another thing you could do. Now, I always like to toast the nuts first before I add them to the cake batter. So what you will need to do is take your half a cup. Well, actually, you know, just as a little tip, I always like to toast my nuts before I put them in a cake batter. So what I do, when I buy a bag of safe pecans, I toast the whole thing. I put it on my baking sheet, toast them all, then let them cool, chop them, and then I just put them in a container and put them into the freezer. So every time I make a cake, I don't have to like a half a cup. I don't have to bake them. I just take them right out of the freezer and they're ready to go. But anyways, so if you want, just do a half a cup. Just put them on your baking sheet, pop them into the oven about 6 minutes or until you start to smell them, and then let them cool and then coarsely chop. You don't actually have to toast them. If you prefer them raw, you could just do that as well. So that's that. So for the batter, again, if you have a stand mixer, you use your paddle attachment. Hand mixer, really, if you want to just mix it by hand with a wire whisk, you could do that. The first thing that you will need is 2 large eggs. That's 100 grams out of the shell. Have your eggs at room temperature. And I'm just going to beat these medium speed just until they get mixed up kind of frothy, maybe a minute or so. Okay, so next you will add 3/4 of a cup, which is 150 grams of granulated white sugar. And for flavoring, I'm also adding 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. Again, if you don't want the vanilla flavor, you could just leave that out. So now what I'm going to do is beat this on medium-high speed, probably for a few minutes. I want it to get mixed together and then get thick and light in color. Okay, I'll just show you the bowl here. So it's really light color and it's quite thick. So that's what you're looking for. I would say that probably took at least 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, depending on your mixer. And next, what we're going to do is have our mixer on low speed, and I'm going to gradually pour in a half a cup, which is 120 milliliters, 120 grams of a flavorless oil. So that could be corn, vegetable, canola, safflower. I think you could even use a very light tasting olive oil here as well. So just have it on low and pour it in. Then turn your mixer speed up just to get it fully mixed in. Okay, looks good. I'm just going to make sure I got waste not, want not, as they say. Okay, so now in a separate bowl, I have 1 cup, which is 130 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. I'm going to add to that 3/4 of a teaspoon, 3 grams of baking powder, and a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1 gram. I'm using a fine kosher salt. You could just use a table salt, whatever you have, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I like, in my carrot cake, I just like ground cinnamon. I like the flavor. Plus I like how it colors the batter, makes the cake a really pretty brown color. I guess if you don't like ground cinnamon in your carrot cake, you could leave it out or use something else. But I love it, so put it in. So I'm just using, I mean, you could sift everything together. I'm just using a wire whisk. You could use fork, fingers. So that's our dry. We have our chopped nuts, and of course we need grated carrot because it is a carrot cake. You will need about 2 cups, which is 225 grams of raw grated carrot. If you are measuring by cups, you would need to start with about 3/4 of a pound, no, half a pound, 225 grams of raw peeled carrots with the ends cut off. So to grate, if you have a food processor where you have the shredder attachment, I don't have one, but if you do, it's really fast work to grate it. But if you don't, then the trusty box grater. I like a pretty big grate, so I'm using this side, the bigger one. But if you'd like a fine, like, because I like to see the shreds of carrot in my cake, but if you prefer a finer one, then you could use the other side or whatever, a finer grate. But that's what we will need. So I'm going to first put in my dry ingredients. And I'm going to dump everything in here. My chopped nuts and all of my, you know, when I make this, or when I make, you can go to the joybaking.com website, and I do have, you know, if you want the classic carrot cake with the cream cheese, the 2-layer with the cream cheese frosting, I do have a recipe there. But the biggest time-consuming part of making this cake is grating those carrots if you use a box grater. When you get that done, you're home free. Okay, so I'm just going to beat this in. Low speed. Okay, and we are done. So just give me a sec here. Clean up my mess. Excuse me. Don't mean to turn my back on you. So now, what we're going to do, this is such a wonderfully moist cake. Just make sure everything's all mixed together and the carrots aren't clumping. There, okay. It's so moist. And you know, this stores really well in the refrigerator. Actually, I think it tastes, you know, if I make it, I think it tastes better if it's, if I store it in the refrigerator overnight first. I think the flavor develops and becomes even more moist. But, you know, usually you can't wait. You have to have at least a slice the day you make it. So, just take your offset spatula, or you can just use the back of a spoon, and smooth that out evenly as you can. Okay. Clean that off. And then we have our cheesecake. I'm just going to put dollops on top. You could put it in a piping bag and pipe it, just have a large plain tip. I just use, honestly, I could pipe it, but you know what? I don't know about you. I hate cleaning those piping bags, so I prefer just to use my spoon. Easier to wash up. But either way. Okay, so once you get all that, then again, back of a spoon, offset, just kind of smooth that out as best as you can. Try to get an even layer. It's really cool how you bake these two together and they kind of fuse. Just move that around here. Okay, that looks good. Happy with that. So now, baking. I'm going to give you a bit of a range, 40 to 50 minutes, because everybody's oven is a little different. So what you're looking for, you want that cheesecake topping to be set. You don't want it wet, or you want it set. And actually it'll start to, as you can see, You can see here, it does start to brown. Depending on your oven, you know, you might get a lot of browning or not, so don't panic if you don't get much browning. But so that, and then you take a toothpick and you want to make sure you insert it all the way down into the carrot cake, because you want to make sure that that carrot cake is done. So I'm going to say between 40 and 50 minutes. I do rotate my baking sheet front to back about halfway through to get a nice even bake. Okay. Our carrot cheesecake is done. So put your pan on a wire rack. Doesn't that look gorgeous? It's if I wiggle, you can see it's set. It's turned nice and golden brown in places. And when I put a toothpick into the center, it came out clean. Like I said, remember to put it right down into the carrot cake part to make sure that that is done. So now I'm going to let it cool in the pan like this for about 10 minutes, and then I will undo, as you can see here, I'll undo my clamp and take off that part and let it finish cooling down to room temperature. And then when we come back, we will try a piece. So our carrot cheesecake is now cooled down to room temperature. I love the look of this. It's very rustic looking. It's kind of bumpy on top, and with the browning of the cheesecake topping. Really. So now let's take a knife. And if you want, you can wipe off in between cuts to get a really clean cut. Okay. Oh, there we have it. Doesn't that look nice? I think it's so cool. I mean, I love a carrot cake with cream cheese frosting. This is kind of just a unique twist on that. But I like when you bake that topping on top of the carrot cake. Whoop. It's delicious, really. I just love it. The carrot cake is really moist. You know, you use the oil, and that as opposed to butter, the oil helps to make it moist. And another reason for why I like to use oil, because this has to be refrigerated because we have a cheesecake topping. And oil will keep the cake soft as opposed to if you use butter. Butter gets firm when it's cold, so it would make it more firm. I like it so much, I'm going to have another. Oh. Carrot cake is a spice cake. So you have that cinnamon flavor, and then you have the carrots, which add sweetness and a little bit of chew, and then the nuts, and then the cheesecake topping, creamy smooth, rich. It's a wonderful combination. Now I have it at room, it's actually a little warm, room temperature. It's really good when you put it in the fridge overnight and chill it down. I think the flavors develop even more. You could probably refrigerate this 4 or 5 days. You could even freeze it if you wanted to. But you have to try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.